First teaser for Avengers Doomsday is out fully in HD. We can finally see this clear. And there's a lot that we need to break down, which we're going to do right here. So we had the official trailer that came out via Marvel after we had been told that every and other week we will receive a trailer, or should I say a teaser each week. We had Captain America, Thor next week, Doomsday, and the final trailer. All these will feature within the Avatar Fire and Ash trailers. Now, I don't know if the reason why we're getting these trailers very fast now is because of the leaked trailers that have already been exposed and shown, but Marvel are really reacting to this, and it seems as though we should get the other teasers and trailers when the following weeks come. Now, to start off, we see in the trailer, it takes us back to Steve living with Peggy in 1940s, which is literally what happens at the end of Avengers Endgame, where Steve goes and returns back the stone. And while he returns back the stone, he lives with Peggy a bit in the 1940s. Meanwhile, the Steve Rogers in his universe is still frozen. This is a very interesting case which we'll speak about further on. Now we see Steve Rogers take out the Captain America costume, which raises people with questions. Is he about to use it? It really gives a green light that, Steve Rogers is about to be in action. On top of that, we see King with his child. Steve is now a father, which is one of the big highlights of this teaser. So far, what we see from this frame is it's the same house as the house in Avengers Endgame, and the same suit also that is shown in the teaser as he had in Avengers Endgame 2. It's safe to say that this is the Steve Rogers from 616, which has now taken himself back to time. This is a big highlight in regards to Avengers Doomsday. Taken from this trailer, we assume this definitely has to be the Steve of 616, as the other Steve Rogers is currently frozen. And this Steve is now living a life which he himself did not get the chance to live with Peggy. Another interesting fact is, Peggy in the Winter Soldier speaks to Steve when she's much older. She tells Steve about her life and how she had sons. It really makes us think, could these sons be the children of Steve Rogers, but Steve went back in time for this whole life to occur? Now, that's us assuming that time works in a complete loop, but it's very interesting to say the least. Now, as Steve Rogers returns as an old man, it makes us wonder, okay, did old Steve go through the Doomsday Wars? Did he experience the Secret Wars? And was this him coming back? I mean, he turns up and gives Sam Wilson the shield. And Sam asks him, how's that life? One special and interesting way is the way Steve Rogers said, I think I'm not going to tell you. Maybe there's a lot there that really says a lot for what they're about to fight. And clearly, it'd be a bit crazy for Steve to let them know what their future already holds before they see it themselves. And he smiles. You know, a lot of the time we see Steve smile and we wonder, what is it that he knows that we're about to know? You know, and the way he smiles at his son and sort of prepares for war, we definitely know something big must have happened for him to get at this particular point. We can assume that Steve got a calling just like the others, such as your Force, that, look, war's set, war's ready, we need you guys. Now, there could be another assumption that the old Steve that returns back never went through these wars, the Doomsday or the Secret Wars. In Loki, He Who Remains addresses Loki and states that everything will now change. Maybe right after that particular point where Steve comes back as an old man, this was all before this whole big shift which changed time back and forth, which may predicate that he never actually experienced the Secret Wars or Doomsday at all. One other theory is, does Sam Wilson die after sacrificing himself? Is this a case of Steve always giving him the shield and he lives the brave wars and then Steve takes that shield and gives it back to Sam? That would be a crazy loop. Now, another interesting fact is that at the end it states Steve Rogers will return to Avengers Doomsday rather than Captain America. I think this really highlights that we will refer to Sam Wilson as Captain America and not Steve. This will be very, very, very interesting to see going forward how that dynamic turns out. And after that, we reach for the Doomsday Clock. This symbolises the likelihood for global catastrophe. The same Doomsday Clock that was shown back in those days where the Cold War occurred. This is something that symbolises what Doctor Doom will mean as a threat. Now, the main antithesis for all of this, for Steve being involved, is the fact that Steve going back in time caused an incursion. Now, we know in Doctor Strange's last movie, the Illuminati Council which they had, which Reed Richards told Doctor Strange, look, if you end up going back in time, it creates an incursion. This causes serious issues, which Steve had caused. This could have been a crime to Doctor Doom. Maybe this incursion caused the loss of his family. You see at the end of Fantastic Four First Steps, Doom meeting Franklin. Maybe Franklin reminds Doom of his son. But this will be very, very personal for Doctor Doom. And we know that it looks as though he won't stop until everyone that has caused him issues is squashed. Now, you can expect Robert Downey Jr. playing as Doctor Doom is going to be a masterclass. The acting for this is going to be literally crazy, insane. It's the perfect villain. And we can't wait to see this by the perfect superhero. Also, the fact that we're bringing these OG characters back, Robert Downey Jr.'s, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth. Oh yeah, it really tells us a lot of how they're trying to bring the OG characters back in, which will be a big pull for Avengers going forward. And now, of course, we're going to get the X-Men, the Fantastic Fours, Thunderbolts, Wakanda. We're really going to get a lot of the superheroes we expect. But it feels as though they're really trying to push the remaining efforts for the OG characters to make a huge transition for the new characters and introduce the new characters that they need to really step up in the Avengers, especially building them up for Secret Wars. Now, we can expect there'll also be other small Easter eggs, especially with Spider-Man coming with Brand New Day. Yeah, we can really expect that would be highly linked to Avengers Doomsday. That's going to be another Marvel that really is one that we have to check for. But before then, I'm sure we'll have the trailer for Doomsday, and this is going to be prolific, and everyone is literally going to lose their minds when seeing it. So we can expect that Marvel are really going to push some great movies ahead. And we know that after Doomsday, Secret Wars, and I think this might replicate today's version of Infinity Wars and Endgame. So we definitely know that the next two big installments of Avengers is going to be huge. One other interesting fact is, was their decision really changed, given the fact that, they really tried to push the Thunderbolts, especially for the new Avengers, and put the OGs to a side? Also, the fact that the original villain was particularly meant to be Jonathan Majors' Kang. We can only imagine what was meant to be the plan with Kang going forward. But now that things have changed, it seems as though they've even increased and hyped the movie. And yeah, this is going to be huge and prolific. I feel like bringing the different sectors and teams from the Avengers is going to be very interesting. There's fears about these teams fighting each other. Fears about the amount of deaths that could occur in Avengers Doomsday. Big fears as though this particular Avengers Doomsday is going to be really dominated, with Doomsday winning in the actual film and giving everyone a big L. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this follows through from this to Secret Wars. But I can imagine that it's really going to be crazy. And I think the antagonist, who is Doctor Doom, is really going to give everybody hell. And I think that's what we really need to set up a good saga going forward. Doomsday really has to show his strength, show his domination, and defeat them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes. It's also worth having a heads up for all the other movies, which include Spider-Man. Furthermore, I feel as though the collaborations of a lot of these characters is going to be very exciting. We're going to get characters such as Deadpool that we never ever have had the chance to see on a grand scale. I mean, we saw his movie with Wolverine, and that was another movie itself that really linked to Doomsday going forward in terms of the incursions in times. So we can expect a lot of surprises. I think one other thing people have to watch out for is a lot of versions. We hear about Tobey Maguire coming in as Spider-Man. We hear all these announces. So we definitely know that we're going to have different versions of superheroes coming in as they walk through the multiverse. So a lot of that is going to make it really interesting what is really going to be featured. But yeah, this is the big thing right now. So we know it's going to be epic. So definitely make sure to like, comment, share and subscribe with much more breakdowns going forward.